How Tupac's godmother became one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives.
Meet Assata Shakur, Tupac's godmother who escaped prison in 1979 and is still at large. Black liberation activist Assata Shakur was found guilty of killing a police officer in 1977, only to escape prison 2 years later and become a political refugee in Cuba. When Joanne Deborah Byron was born in Queens, New York in 1947, the world around her was strictly divided along racial and gender lines, and Jim Crow laws ensured that segregation was woven into the culture of New York. These realities shaped Byron's life, who came to be known as Assata Shakur, and were the impetus for her social activism and eventually landed her on the FBI's most wanted list as a domestic terrorist. In 1973, Shakur was convicted of murdering state trooper Warner Forster during a shootout on the New Jersey Turnpike, but she managed to escape custody and has been living in Cuba since 1979. Ever since then, Shakur has come to embody intersectional liberation politics of the late civil rights era to many, and many still support her in the United States, despite or perhaps because of what happened that day in 1973. Shortly before 1 a.m. on the morning of May 2nd, 1973, 2 full years into the BLA's crime spree, New Jersey State Trooper James Harper stopped a speeding car with a broken taillight on the New Jersey Turnpike. During the stop, he asked the male driver of the vehicle to step out, and, according to the later testimony of another officer who arrived as backup, found a gun inside the car. What happened next is the subject of disagreement, but it ended with one member of the BLA dead, Shakur wounded, and State Trooper Warner Forster killed with 2 shots to the head from his own gun. The group fled, but an injured Shakur surrendered soon after. The other surviving BLA member was found 36 hours later after a multi-state manhunt. Assata Shakur soon found herself surrounded with legal controversy. Her activities since skipping bail on the 1971 robbery had landed her on a terrorist watch list, and the FBI's anti-terror working group had made Shakur's organization a prime target. Authorities in over a dozen states had been briefed on the BLA, and prosecutors had a laundry list of charges to bring against its members. Shakur herself was charged with 10 felony counts, stemming from, among other things, the Turnpike shooting, multiple robberies, kidnapping a heroin dealer, and attempted murder of 2 ambushed police officers in Queens. In January 1974, the Turnpike case ended in a mistrial because Shakur was pregnant and there was worry that the trial could cause a miscarriage, though she was arraigned a few months later for the grenade attack. The charges from that incident were actually dropped. Having beaten most of the charges against her, Assata Shakur and her legal team embarked on what was virtually a war against the justice system. For years, her lawyers delayed the Turnpike murder case with endless motions and procedural matters. Throughout the 9-week trial, the courthouse was secured by a ring of deputies who were themselves surrounded by civil rights activists, many of them armed and in attendance to protest each day. Ultimately, the jury found Shakur guilty as charged on both murder counts and all 6 assault charges. On hearing the verdict, Shakur called the jury racist and announced she was ashamed to have been a part of the trial at all. A few months later, in 1974, Shakur was sentenced to mandatory life in prison for the murder and a consecutive 26 to 33 years for the assault charges. Under the laws that New Jersey had at the time, she would have been eligible for parole in 2002. While Shakur was locked up, the prison didn't do background checks on the visitors. And in 1979, 3 of those visitors turned out to be BLA members with fake IDs, guns, and sticks of dynamite. The intruders took a couple of guards hostage and loaded Shakur into a waiting van. The FBI staged a major manhunt for Shakur and her associates, but to no avail. She had a large and unexpectedly well-financed underground network, which hid her for nearly 7 years, until in 1984 she was granted asylum in Cuba. Describing herself as an escaped political prisoner and as a modern-day runaway slave, Assata Shakur broadcast Cuban propaganda from a Havana radio station and wrote about her experiences, all while being maintained by the Cuban government on a budget of $13 a day. Shakur lived openly in her home until 2005, when the Justice Department raised the bounty to $1 million. She subsequently disappeared. Then in 2013, the reward money doubled. Remember, if it's more interesting, you can find it here. Thanks for watching.